Hello, I'm Mike Myers, president of the Society of Insurance Research. And today, I'd like to welcome you to our President's Chat, where I get to catch up with past presidents of the SIR, find out a little bit about our history and the good times that they experienced. Today, I have the pleasure of meeting with Jeff Nagel, currently at Zurich. And Jeff was president first in 2007. Is that right?
Correct, 2007.
Great. And Jeff, why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your time in the insurance industry?
Sure. So Jeff Nagel, and I've been affiliated with the SIR going back to 2002 was my first conference.
Mhm.
And all the way up to 2014, I was active, and it was a very memorable and very good time in my insurance career. And when you asked me about being interviewed, it gave me a time to think back on some memories. So I may be prepared to share some good stuff, but really some fond memories. I got involved in the insurance industry right after I graduated college in '83. This is going way back 37 years in the industry. And when I graduated, it was a very difficult time economically. In Illinois, unemployment was somewhere 12% or something like that. So there wasn't much need for an economics major coming out of school. So it took me until March. I worked jobs, odds and end kind of jobs. And then in March, I got my first job with Hanover Insurance in the Chicago branch. I was a commercial lines rater and manually rating commercial policies. And it was really a good experience to have knowledge of that. And then I moved into underwriting training program about a year later. From Hanover, I spent about 4 years with Hanover, and then I went to work for a broker for a year. Again, that was a good experience to see the other side of things. But I knew that wasn't for me, that career path. So I went back into the insurance company side, where I went to Kemper, their home office in northwest suburbs of Chicago, Long Grove. Great company to work for, learned a ton there, spent 10 years at Kemper at their home office before I moved to Allstate's home office, again, northwest suburbs, Northbrook, Illinois, where I spent 12 years. And at Allstate, I gained a lot of experience doing a variety of things. My favorite was product development. I led a small product development team there, and that was a lot of fun working with the marketing department and with the actuaries and developing some of the products that we rolled out. Then from Allstate, I went to Zurich's corporate headquarters, their North American corporate headquarters, again in the northwest suburbs, Schaumburg, Illinois. So I spent all my career not having to move. So never changed schools, grew up in the same house, and I worked for Hanover's before I was married, but 3 companies, home offices without ever having to move. And my commute was never more than 35 minutes long. So I feel very fortunate to have experienced that. And what do you know? After all that, we moved to Texas 2 months ago. We sold our house.
Broke the series here.
Yeah, our kids are grown, and they're out on their own. And my youngest son moved to Houston after he graduated college. So we decided, well, we're gonna try something different. So we moved down here 2 months ago. So I'm working remotely for Zurich down here in Houston, right down the road from where you're at.
Awesome. Well, welcome to Texas. As they say, we all aren't fortunate enough to be born here, but we try to get here as soon as we can, right?
Yeah. We like it a lot, and we'll see if we end up staying here. The housing market, the time we sold our house was absolutely crazy at its peak. I thought, if we're gonna sell, now's the time. So we're renting down here, and we're going to decide. We got another year to decide what we actually want to do. But
Well, great.
here.
That's exciting. You had
Yeah.
have and continue to have a great career, but it's really interesting how you were able to stay put for so long and still get a diversity of experiences at different companies.
Right. Yeah. Illinois, is known for insurance
Yeah.
companies. CNA, State Farm, a lot of the big ones are there, and every other one has a big branch office. So it's pretty easy to change companies, I guess, and not have to move to another part of the country.
Yeah. A lot of our membership is in that area for sure.
Yeah.
But speaking of membership, so tell us about your time in SIR. It's funny you mentioned 2014. I think 2014 is when I got my first SIR conference. I
I
think
was
it was
gonna
in
say,
Indianapolis,
yeah,
and I think that's
yes.
the when I started is when you finished.
And I think we met in Indianapolis. I think I
Yeah,
met you because you look very familiar. And
yeah,
it was
small world.
JW Marriott, and
Yep.
I was able to drive down there from Chicago. It was a great, great location, great venue.
Yeah.
It was my last conference, and it's just one of those things. I spent what 02 to 14 as a board member for many years, and it was just time to move on. I had a new job with Zurich, and it probably didn't align well with SIR, what I'm
Yeah.
doing. But like I said, the memories are just great memories and great friendships that were formed. And some of the other interviews I've seen you do, seems like the common theme is the camaraderie and just the family feel to the organization.
Mhm.
Very special. You don't find that very often, and I think that's one of the intangibles of the SIR. That's a real value, and we struggled with how do we promote that value because it's such an intangible.
Mhm.
And I think the only way to do it is people coming to the conference and seeing it for themselves.
Right.
So year after year, you see the same people at the workshops or the annual conference, and it's it's a special thing, and I do miss it quite a bit. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking back on some of those times. I jotted down a few things. I was the my progression through the board was I started as a director, like probably most people do. Spent a couple years in that, and then the career path was traditionally, I don't know how it is now, but you did your directorship, and then you went on to do the chair the spring event, then chair the annual conference, and then move up into a higher role. And for me, that was the presidency. So I just remember back, my first event was '05 in Chicago, the spring conference, and that was a very well attended conference. And then the '06 in Charleston. And my memory of the '06 conference is the AC chair. And I hope that the AC chairs are getting more support nowadays, but it was kind of a stressful thing.
Yeah.
You're putting all these panels and things together, and I was trying to put together an insurance commissioner panel, and I thought this is going to be really cool. We're going to get all these insurance commissioners, and we've had this in the past, and they're typically very interactive, and you get the varying views from the different commissioners. It can get a little contentious, and I think those are the best kind of panels where there's people aren't seeing eye to eye on things, and then the audience gets to, they can decide for themselves. So I would say at one point in time, I probably had contacted 17 or 18 insurance commissioners, and it was like a revolving thing. They committed, then they were off, then somebody else committed, and they were off. It was this continuous cycle of they're going to be there, then they're not going to be there. I thought that day is going to come, we're not going to have anybody. And it was probably a couple of weeks before that it actually solidified. And we ended up having, I think, a few commissioners, some deputy commissioners. But I remember, do you remember Oxendine from Georgia, the commissioner of Georgia?
Yeah.
Very controversial, very outspoken. And I wanted this guy at the conference because you want people like that.
Uh-huh.
he was a very cocky guy, and he was up for re-election in '06. And when I contacted his office, I didn't speak to him personally, but oh, they were absolutely sure that he would definitely be at that conference in Charleston. It's right down the road, and yeah, you can count on it. And I said, well, it is an election year, and our conference is right around the election. It might be a problem. Oh no, that's not going to be a problem. So he didn't come because he was fighting for his office. And I can't remember if he wanted or not. I should look back and check, but just remember the excitement of putting all those panels together, and then the day that it actually happens, and it was fun. But I remember '06 very well because we're transitioning executive directors from Stan Hopp, was longtime executive director, to Ed Budd, who came on and served for probably 8 or 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And right before that conference, I got a call from Ed Budd, and it was a Saturday evening. It was probably around 8 or 9 o'clock. And he called me up, and he was really shook. And he told me Stan had suddenly passed away.
Oh, wow.
I don't know, probably a month before the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just tragic, terrible to hear that news. But then Ed had to jump in and make sure that, everything was running smoothly and we got that conference done. But I remember when I kicked the conference off, I did a eulogy basically for Stan. And it was very sad time. But Stan was a great executive director, really good man, and his wife Ginger, really phenomenal people to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed came in, and Ed did a really, really good job with the SIR as well, and took us through some very difficult times, through the recession back in 07, 08, that time period where I wasn't sure we were going to make it. A lot of nonprofits were put out of business, but the SIR, 51 years, very resilient organization, extremely resilient. And I think it goes back to that loyalty of membership, and people coming back and supporting the organization and sticking together.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think I met Ed at the 2014 conference before, we transitioned to a new executive director. And then he also came, I think in 2017 to Milwaukee. We had a conference in Milwaukee, and he came up to visit and to say hi. And I actually received the Hot Bud Award that year and got it autographed, by Ed. So
yeah.
Yeah,
he came up with that, the executive director's award. Yeah, Ed had come up with that shortly after he took the role. And do they still have that award?
They do. We do. We still give it away every year for high achievers, that volunteer and show up in a number of places. And we've continued that tradition.
Oh, that's good. It's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, how I think your role is changed, may not be as quietly aligned with SIR now, but presidents are members for life. So
membership.
That's right. So stay in touch and continue to participate as you can, virtually, or we won't be, the annual conference will be in Cincinnati this year. It would have been closer to you in Illinois, but I'd love to, have you at one of those events as well.
Yeah. I've been to Cincinnati. I remember when Gary Hodge was doing an annual conference, and I forget if I was past president or president, but Ed and I actually made a road trip down there to visit Gary at American Modern and kind of get that thing off the ground. So it's a good place to do a conference.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, we were going to have it there last year. Unfortunately, we couldn't, but we're going to have it this year for sure. So I believe, are you in compliance now at?
Right. Yeah. I'm in the
Oh,
compliance office. My role is I am I guess we would call it the market conduct slash investigation person. I'm the liaison between Zurich and the regulator when it comes to examinations, market conduct, or requests for data calls or many of the investigations I would oversee.
yeah.
That's my primary role. I work very closely with the regulators.
Yeah, that's cool. We actually added NEIC as a member this year.
Okay.
So glad to get more involvement from the regulators. We continue to try to have a panel of the DOIs at the conference, to kind of talk, just like the one you were planning in 2006. We'll have another one this year. But I wanted to ask you about any perspectives you have about the industry. So, sitting in a different seat than some of our members now, in research and competitive intelligence and product. I mean, coming at it from that compliance lens, you may have a unique point of view of the state of the industry and maybe some recent trends that you find interesting. I don't know if anything stands out to you.
Yeah, my role now is so much more retrospective than prospective, because when an insurance department comes in and they're looking backwards. So last 5 years, maybe the exam period, or the last 3 years. So I'm going backwards rather than going forwards.
Right.
But what I'm seeing in Zurich is making a real concerted strategic effort, and I'm sure the other company is too, to really focus on the customer. And I know that companies always say, "Oh yeah, we focus on the customer," but what does that really mean? And how do you really do that where you can measure it and you can monitor for it and make sure that the teams are executing on that? It is again an intangible. So I'm seeing that, and I'm actually participating in that at Zurich, so that we can really put that customer first and not just say it, but actually have a strategic plan to do it, even when it's a negative thing for the customer. Like if we're non-renewing a policy or canceling a policy, they're not going to be happy. But I think we want to make sure that we're executing on it in such a way so that at least the customer and the broker understand the rationale for it, and why it's being done. It doesn't make it any better, but at least I think it's just the right thing to do, and it's the professional thing to do. So I think focusing on the customer is one of the things that I see really coming up in the forefront.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you would think, like you said, it's intuitive. You would think that we would have been doing it all along, but now it's an increased emphasis for sure. And I'm certainly seeing, given, the amount of enforcement activity and different things that are going on, where companies are really having to re-examine themselves and their level of compliance and making sure that they're checking off all the boxes and doing the right thing and documenting it and being as proactive as possible and managing their processes.
Right.
So that's very cool. Anything else as far as, observations about the industry or anything like that?
Well, I think the industry is lacking youth. And in my son, who he just started with Zurich. He graduated college 2 years ago, and he went into teaching. So he was a high school teacher down here in Houston for 2 years, and he had an opportunity. So he interviewed, and he got the job as an underwriter trainee. And what he's been hearing, and what I've been hearing and seeing, is that people are retiring, and we're losing a lot of knowledge. We're losing a lot of experience. And the farm system isn't quite there in the insurance industry. So I think there's a big opportunity for young people to enter the industry. And I don't know if we still have a reputation as being a dull, industry, but it is not. It's the furthest thing from it. And if you think about every single discipline plays a role, whether it's legal or accounting or predictive modeling or finance or there's everything you could think of you need to run an insurance company. So there's endless opportunity. So I think recruiting those young people into the business, and I don't know how we do that at the SIR. We kind of made an attempt years ago. Howard Goldstein used to be the education person on the board. And Howard was also a professor at DePaul University, adjunct professor at DePaul, and he taught insurance classes there. And he developed a course called Insurance Fundamentals. And this was an attempt to bring people in that just entered the industry, that didn't have the knowledge base yet, to have them come through this course. And we have it, I think we did it a few times where we had it a day before the annual conference or a day before the spring workshop where they could do that. And we had some independent sessions that we ran at DePaul University. So that was our attempt to bring youth into the SIR people that have just started in the business. So that would be something to consider.
Yeah. I mean, I think as you've seen probably in some of our other interviews, we've talked about certification program or something like that. Insurance fundamentals course sounds very interesting. One of the things that we're doing now in order to facilitate some of the youth movement within the industry and within SIR is we've been offering free student memberships. When someone's in college, they're in their junior, senior year, maybe they've had an internship at an insurance company. We offer a free student membership so that they can kind of start building that business acumen and experiencing what it's like to work with in a wider network. And we hope that program will mature into potential mentorship programs and other things like that. But it's certainly a known problem for the industry and an opportunity for SIR as well.
Oh, that's good that you guys are thinking about that. The other thing I noticed, which surprised me a little bit when I was preparing for the interview and I went out to look at the board, it was like, whoa, I don't know anybody. I know probably the only people I know would be Jen and so I don't even remember her name, from the Griffith Foundation.
Oh, Vicki Kilgore?
Vicki. So Jen and Vicki were coming on the board kind of as I was leaving. So I recognized their names and I could place them, but I don't really, I know some of the others that were, previous SIR attendees, they speak at conferences and so forth, but I was surprised to see that none of the people I knew and served with are on the board. And I think that's probably a good thing. You get some fresh energy and blood into the board.
Yeah.
I probably served a little too long, 10, 11. So I think that's healthy to have a more vibrant board when you have that kind of a turnover. That was good to see.
Yeah, you want to have like I said, a little healthy turnover. You don't want the entire board, flipping in a year, but we are trying to bring on new talent and also to give opportunities for people to take on more responsibility periodically, but then realizing that we're all volunteers and sometimes it can take a lot of your capacity. Sometimes you need to rotate, in and out. And even if if people serve on the board, I think it was said before that potentially, you just because you roll off the board doesn't mean you have to leave SIR. You can serve on a committee. You can still, go and do something else. But yeah, we've had some rotation, and like I said, hopefully it's healthy to get some new ideas and reinvigorate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what Speaking of that, do you have any other recommendations for SIR members or the board or the
Well,
institution of SIR?
I got to tell you, you guys, the board has been doing an amazing job. You folks are doing everything we dreamed of. And I hardly can recommend anything to you. I mean, I just, I see the host of webinars and just all the different offerings that are being done now. And, back in the day, we made attempts at those sort of things, but I don't know, we just could never pull all that together. And I think it may be helpful that you have a firm now that's leading all the administrative functions. Yep. And I know that Ed did a really good job with that, but Ed was only one person, and Pam assisted as she could assist. But perhaps having that dedicated administrative support frees up some more resources to do everything that you folks are doing. Mm-hmm. But very, very healthy organization, financially, and you got a lot of members. So I can't give you any advice.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the observations. It's a great group. Volunteers, on the board and committees, and their membership has been very loyal. But everything I think we accomplish is really because it's a passion project. People just want to do it, and I think that's where we get the best results. So I'm very happy, with a lot of the things that we're doing. I think we have opportunities to do more, but there's a balance, and because it takes effort to execute those things.
Sure.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure serving, and following in your footsteps as the president. And you even came back for more. You served for a year in 2007. You took a break, and then you served in, was it 2007? And then you came back in 2009, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think we were in a time where we were struggling, mainly because of the economy, and companies weren't sending people to conferences. Companies weren't supporting it as much because they were having, expense issues with the economy. So carry that momentum. But I think it was a good precedent because if the person coming in has a vision and a plan, you can't execute that in a single year. I think you need a few years to get that rolling and get the momentum. So after I had served, I was the first two-time president, and then Candace shortly after me. And then, then it became, Gary served multiple terms, and then Sharon's the FDR of the SAR.
She is.
Consecutive terms. So now it seems like the norm now, which I think is probably a good thing. 1 year is difficult.
It is.
Execute.
Yeah, we've been trying to do 2-year terms at a minimum, and so it helps from a continuity standpoint, and then being able to see some things through. It's tough if you have just 1 year and then you're already starting to transition to the next president, halfway through. So I think a 2-year term is a good starting point. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have any other words for SIR? We're kind of, as we start to close time.
Just keep doing what you're doing, and I'm really proud of the organization. It'll always have a place in my heart, and I hope to get back one day to one of the conferences and just see it in person again. So I hope to do that.
Well, we'd love to have you back, but I appreciate your time today, and hope you'll stay in touch. Yeah,
thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. This is a great thing you're doing with the interviews, and I look forward to seeing some more with Herb and with Candace and others.
They're on deck. So, and I think they're, Herb mentioned you too. So I know that, You know, there's folks that want to catch up and see how you're doing.
You got to interview Ed Budd. He'd be a good one. Get him on the radar.
All
As
right.
the director.
Yeah, that's a good
He
idea.
really watches this.
All right, Jeff. Well, you take care. Have a good weekend, and thank you for
Okay,
your
you too.
service.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.